This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Things are really happening fast. The stock market is crashing. It's going on 4,000 points just in the last few days down. Thank God I didn't put any money in the stock market. I hope you didn't either, because it's probably only going to get worse. I think this thing was started, this coronavirus scare, because a Chinese military facility in Wuhan likely leaked this virus. I mean, there was a movie years ago, The Andromeda Strain in Hollywood, that said the same thing happened in the United States. And you might remember that after 9/11, there was anthrax attacks in Washington, D.C. and in South Florida. And that was anthrax that George H.W. Bush and Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld had actually given to Saddam Hussein at the time. It was the same strain. The FBI covered it up. They accused a couple people wrongly of doing it. One committed suicide, and we never really found out the origin of it, at least in terms of confirmed by the government. But I believe China's at issue here. And we are going to try to be bringing cases. And by the way, I like the Chinese people. And, whether you're out on the West Coast or East Coast or whatever, Chinese Americans are very good people. They're hardworking, along with Asians. So no implication in that respect. But the Chinese government is pure evil. And they're covering this up. And I believe that they're responsible. There's a tremendous amount of damage. They would not be immune from prosecution, I don't believe, and I'm going to test it. I'm going to find some plaintiffs and bring some cases. Given the fact that this is, in effect, an act of terrorism. This is outlawed by the Geneva Convention, biological weapons, those kinds of things. So this is something that we'll be looking at. But what is equally as sinister to what the Chinese have done is the fact that the left here, the radical socialist, communist, anti-Semitic, anti-Christian left. I can go on and on and on. Of course, we saw the performance of Bernie Sanders this week, a self-hating Jew, someone who refused to go to AIPAC, but that's one thing. So did the rest of the Democratic presidential field, because they kowtow to the radical left, which is anti-Semitic and pro-Palestinian, pro-Arab. They would like to see the end, frankly, of the state of Israel, who is our strongest ally. And of course, our Judeo-Christian heritage is linked. I mean, we're tied at the hip with our heritage in Israel. But these people, and particularly Bernie Sanders, attacked the American Israel Public Affairs Committee conference. And whether you like them or not, he used it as an opportunity to attack Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, called them both racists. He also, at the same time, praised Fidel Castro and his brother Raul Castro and Ramon Castro and the Castros in general in Cuba. I mean, the guy is a self-hating, anti-Semitic communist in the mold of Karl Marx and Leon Trotsky, Saul Alinsky, and others. I regret to say this, and I've talked about it many, many times, is as a Jew and as a Christian, I'm more than embarrassed. I'm disgusted, because it was elements of my people, and not the majority. And that's why we have a coalition of the Jewish right, because we need to teach the American people that Jewish people are not this way. But it was elements, radical elements of the Jewish left, Marx, Trotsky, the rest of them, that it literally invented communism. And they were also vehement anti-Semites. They hated themselves. Many people think that one of Hitler's great-grandparents was also Jewish. Adolf Eichmann was in part Jewish. He was Hitler's henchmen. And we Jews need to police ourselves. But the American people need to rise up as a whole, too, because this element of the Democrat Party, which has taken over the Democrat Party, whether it's Bernie Sanders, whether it's Pocahontas Elizabeth Warren, whether it's little Pete Buttigieg, who has gone along with condemning Israel, whether it's Elizabeth Warren, who does the same, a whole host of them. They're extremely dangerous. And they've used this coronavirus to whip up fear and to whip up panic in this country, blaming Donald Trump for not doing enough. I mean, obviously, that's made up. They didn't succeed with the Russian witch hunt. They didn't succeed with the Ukrainian witch hunt. They didn't succeed with their impeachment game. They didn't succeed with smearing through the New York Times, which, by the way, the president finally took action himself and sued the New York Times over false stories of Russian collusion and a so-called conspiracy with the Russians, which drew my client, Jerry Corsi, into the Russian collusion witch hunt. We'll be intervening in that case on behalf of Corsi at Freedom Watch. But these people want to see the stock market collapse, and they want to create fear. And that's exactly what is happening. And frankly, it's a rout at this point in time. I mean, it looks like 2008 all over again when the stock market collapsed. But this time, it could be even worse, because that was simply a correction. That was simply an overcorrection. Now we have the possibility of a worldwide pandemic, a plague, in effect, where people are afraid to go out of their homes, where schools in foreign countries now are being shut down. I assume that'll happen here as well. Sporting events, all kinds of things are going to happen. And in your hometown, you will find very shortly people infected by the coronavirus who didn't come from overseas, but who are certainly were living amongst us. Now, I don't think this can be underestimated, because even if the coronavirus is not as fatal or as harmful as the Democrats now are whipping up to try to take control, because, see, Trump's trump card, so to speak, has been the economy. So if you bring down the stock market and you collapse the economy, then the Democrats, socialists, anti-Semites, anti-Christians, pro-radical black, atheist, proto-radical feminist, pro-radical Muslim, all the rest of them will now attempt to take the country over, either at the voting box or, in fact, forcefully. Because if we have panic in this country, you can bet people are going to be out in the streets. I mean, it's going to be like the night of the living dead or walking dead or whatever it's called. You know, a bunch of zombies walking around, leftist zombies, taking this country over. I'm not kidding. I'm really not kidding. And I get this feeling that we're on the verge of an apocalypse, and the Democrats are whipping that apocalypse notion into the minds of the American people. So we have to fight back. I've been fighting back all along. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. I've got a column tonight that'll be in WorldNet Daily about our leftist media strike force, because if you turn on CNN and MSNBC these days, or read the New York Times, Washington Post, Huffington Post, Rolling Stone, whatever, all of whom, by the way, I've sued for our clients in defamation cases, you'll see that they're furthering the notion that Trump is responsible for this panic over the coronavirus. It's shameless. I walked into a restaurant last night. Up on the monitor was Don Lemon, one of the dumbest people, frankly, in cable news. On the right, you've got Hannity. I think he's the flip side of Don Lemon. I mean, we hear great predictions every night. Things are going to happen that are positive, but they obviously aren't. He wants to boost ratings. So does Lemon. So you get it from both sides. But the American people need the truth, and we need to act very, very quickly, and we need to prevent a panic. And that's why we need to act legally, because we can't count on our judges. They're simply out to lunch. They represent themselves. They represent the people that put them in power. We can't count on Congress. We see what a bunch of clowns they are on both sides of the aisle. We certainly can't count on the executive branch other than the president himself, because the people around him are disloyal. It's like Caesar and Brutus and the Roman Senate. They're trying to stab him in the back every single day. So we, the people, we need to rise up. We need to do something. That's why I want you to join Freedom Watch's leftist media strike force. Join our coalition of the Jewish right, which is also the coalition of the Christian right, because we are brothers. And I kind of unite them both. I guess maybe I'm the missing link in many ways, because I'm both. And I want you to also support our citizens' grand juries to bring about justice. We need to clean house peacefully and legally of the left, because if we don't, and if we don't fight them forcefully, we are in a war. They're going to take this country over. It's going to be like Atlas Shrugged all over again. And we simply cannot afford that in today's day and age. We are on the face of a massive potential revolution in this country, a revolution which could result in a takeover of this country, much like we saw Nazi Germany by Hitler. Remember what the name of his party was called? The National Socialist Party. Remember what the Soviet Union was, socialist, communist. That's why the two of them fought. That's why Hitler fought Stalin and vice versa, because they were vying for control of the world, to turn the world into a totally government-dominated state where God would have no role to play, but they would have the role to play. That's what we're facing now. And this coronavirus is the vehicle that the left sees that they couldn't achieve with the Russian witch hunt. They couldn't achieve it with the Ukrainian witch hunt. They couldn't achieve it thus far with impeachments and trials in the Senate for conviction. But with complete chaos and pandemonium, they could potentially take control. And it perhaps will not be too far into the future, if at all, when you'll find people camped in front of your house demanding your keys, that they're going to take your home over and take your dog and take your children and take everything you own and assume total control like in a totalitarian regime. So we need to fight back, whether it's the Chinese government who likely released this thing or whether it's the forces of the left in this country. Now, I'm going to be back, and we're going to talk about a few other things. Later on in the show, we're going to have Sheriff Joe Arpaio, because he's somebody who stood in the stead for we the people. I'll be right back. Until then, go to freedomwatchusa.org and join our Justice League.
Dangerous.
Don't care. Use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor.
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I'm having Sheriff Joe Arpaio, America's sheriff, America's toughest sheriff, my friend, my client, someone who has fought for law and order in this country, opposing illegal immigration, opposing anything that smacks of totalitarianism, of mob rule. He was the sheriff in Maricopa County. He's running again for sheriff, and in my personal capacity, I endorse him. I've never heard a racist word out of Sheriff Arpaio, but he's an example of how the leftist media, and I talk about this leftist media strike force, not just in this show and my podcast, but also in the column that will appear at www.wnd.com tonight, and you can find it on radioamerica.com and elsewhere, posted on Facebook. Anyway, he is someone who has fought the forces of the left. He knows what it's all about. But what did he get for that? He got illegal lynching in federal court in Phoenix. He was found without any basis really at all that he personally had ordered profiling of day worker sites of Latinos and was held in contempt by radical federal judges who wanted to destroy him. One of them was a guy named G. Murray Snow, who actually told his wife, "I'm out to destroy Sheriff Joe Arpaio." She let that slip to a friend in a public restaurant. It was overheard, but it didn't stop anybody from stopping Murray Snow, this judge, from finding Sheriff Arpaio in contempt. And then another judge, Susan Bolton, an Obama appointee, found Sheriff Arpaio guilty of a criminal misdemeanor, not a felony. But when that happened, of course, the president then pardoned him almost immediately, which he should have done. That was a legitimate pardon by the president. You have others out there that attacked the sheriff, wanted to bury him, just like they want to bury Trump, they want to bury me, they want to bury anybody that fights and stands up against them. And it was CNN, Huffington Post, Rolling Stone, and others that called Sheriff Arpaio, a convicted felon. He was not a felon. It was a misdemeanor. It was like having a traffic ticket. As bad as it was from these hack judges, it was only a traffic ticket. So I have brought cases against these media outlets for defamation. That's our leftist media strike force. We're going to talk about that. But after that finding came down by Judge Susan Bolton that Sheriff Arpaio had, been convicted of a misdemeanor for racial profiling, which he didn't do in any event, then the pardon came down, and Sheriff Arpaio rightly went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to say, hey, even this little conviction for a misdemeanor should be thrown out. I don't want it on my record. So he went up to the Court of Appeals. I actually represented him there with some other lawyers. Others came in, radical leftists, like this guy Michael Tiger, who sits on a bar committee overlooking my conduct, which was fine in the District of Columbia, but he made a recommendation that I should be suspended for a period of time. It's on appeal. I'm confident of success. But this guy's a communist. I mean, just Google him. He has pictures in a library in the University of Texas of thank you notes from Fidel Castro, praise of Fidel Castro, wears a Cuba shirt with Ramon Castro, was fired at the Supreme Court for his radical views when he was a clerk to Justice William Brennan, has written new books on what's wrong with our legal system, that it's not communist enough, in effect, it's capitalist. This is what we're dealing with in society. So you know what? Bernie Sanders is not an anomaly. The left is going far left. The left is bringing in others around the country and around the world. We are in a revolution. The Bolsheviks, the modern-day Bolsheviks, are attempting to take over, and we heard it this week with Bernie Sanders. He admitted who he was. He admitted he's a communist. He admitted he's anti-Semitic. He admitted, because if you're anti-Semitic, you're also anti-Christian. We're the same people. And that's why people like Sheriff Joe Arpaio are so important, and that's why they're my clients, whether it's Sheriff Arpaio or whether it's Chief Justice Roy Moore, who's also been destroyed by the leftist media, whether it's Cliven Bundy, whether it's Laura Loomer, whether it's Dr. Jerome Corsi. I can go on and on and on. And if Larry Klayman and Freedom Watch and Larry Klayman in his private capacity don't stand up for these people, they'll be destroyed because they are our heroes. They're our modern-day founding fathers. So we're going to be back with Sheriff Arpaio in just a few minutes, actually less than 30 seconds at this point. I want you to hear from him because this is a true American patriot, and we need to rise up and do what Sheriff Arpaio is doing, and I'm here to help you in taking on these evil forces of the left that want to turn our country into a communist, socialist, anti-Semitic, anti-Christian gulag. I'll be right back.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with my very close friend, someone who I admire a great deal, someone who's my client, America's toughest sheriff, America's real sheriff, America's best sheriff, and he's running for sheriff again in Maricopa County, Sheriff Joe Arpaio. And I want to talk, Sheriff, first of all, about your history. Tell them about what you've done in your life, considerable achievement here, and then tell them about why you're running for sheriff again. And we're going to talk about some of the lawsuits I brought on your behalf, and also what happened at the Ninth Circuit this week, which frankly was another outrage out of the Ninth Circuit. But I want them to hear from you, because I've told our audience, our fellow patriots, our friends, our supporters, that we all need to be Sheriff Joe Arpaios. We need to rise up because we're on the verge of having this country taken over by socialists, communists, anti-Semites, anti-Christians, radical Muslims, radical atheists, radical feminists, radical everything. They think they're going to seize control. And I believe they're going to use this coronavirus scare to try to seize control of this country in a state of anarchy. I don't mean to be alarmist, but in fact, I see it happening. So anyway, tell the listeners about your background and how you have fought for freedom and liberty in your lifetime.
You got 5 hours, Larry? Born and raised Springfield, Massachusetts. You know where that is. Joined the Army when I graduated from high school. Turned 18, and the Korean War broke out. 3 years Army, and I was discharged as a staff sergeant. Joined the Washington, D.C. police. Walked a tough black beat in D.C. Then went from there to Vegas, Las Vegas as a cop. Locked up Elvis when I was there. And then the same year went to Chicago, got sworn in as a federal narcotic agent, which is known as DEA now, and married my wife at the same time. My son Rocco was born in Chicago, and then from Chicago, since I did a great job undercover locking up the mob and everybody else, I was transferred to Turkey, was head of the DEA in Turkey, the Middle East, and then from there went to San Antonio in charge, covered the border there, went to Washington in charge of that area, Baltimore, and then went to a special assignment to the border with G. Gordon Liddy and I under President Nixon, just about closed the border for 2 weeks. The Mexicans hated us. Just by chance, I was transferred to Mexico City as the regional director, had offices in Bogota, Argentina, Panama, worked with General Noriega, and of course offices in Mexico. So I covered the border from that side. Now I always said, that Donald Trump, I've been with him from day one and will always be with him, and he takes criticism when he goes to meet with Putin and the Koreans and all that. Well, I love it when he goes to meet with them because you get in the back room. He doesn't smoke or drink, but normally if he did, you light up the cigar and make deals. The public doesn't know. The politicians don't really know everything that he talks about. When I was in Mexico City, they hated us. The Attorney General would come to my house to eat, and he liked blueberry pie, so my wife of 62 years, married her in Chicago, pumped out blueberry pie, threw in a little whiskey, and I got more done with whiskey and blueberry pie than the big stick. General Noriega was playing both sides. I had an office there. I used to go down in a bunker and meet with him. But once again, sometimes you have to deal with your enemies. I learned that in my other career. And then I retired as head of the Federal Drug Enforcement in Arizona, joined my wife in business and ran a small business. And then I ran for sheriff in 1992. I was 60 years old and been sheriff for 24 years, the longest serving sheriff in the history of Maricopa County, which is the 4th largest county in the United States. So I guess I made my name more as the sheriff than I did in my other careers in foreign countries and the United States. Now, I made a mistake when I ran for sheriff. I must have been drunk on Italian olive oil because I said the sheriff should be appointed and not elected. I learned awful fast what a mistake I made, because when you look back at it, if I was appointed, had to serve a governor or board of supervisors, city council, mayor, I would have been fired. There would be no tent city, no underwear, pink underwear, no nothing. No crackdown on drugs, no crackdown on the illegal immigration situation. They got me in a lot of trouble. And, but, when you're elected, when 200 Tea Party members came up to me and they said, "You're our last resort, Sheriff. You're a constitutional elected sheriff. We want you to look at this fake government document," which happened to be Obama's birth certificate. And anybody else in the universe would say, "Give it to the FBI. That's not our jurisdiction." Or, "I'll have my staff, Larry, look at it It'd take the staff 15 years to make a decision. I made that decision in 2 hours, and I'm not stupid. I worked corruption all over the world, and I knew if I ever opened an investigation of the former president, Obama, they would come after me with guns all over the place. Not really guns, although I do get threats. I knew it, but I felt someone had to do this, Larry, and I did it, and I stand by it. Every politician tells me don't talk about the birth certificate. I'm talking about Republicans. Don't talk about it. So, Larry, you've been around a long time. I don't know. It's your show. I'm not going to ask you, but I am very, very concerned. I don't have the answer. Why? Nobody in the universe will ever talk about the birth certificate. Why no one, no reporter will say, hey, Sheriff, let me read what you have. Sheriff, you've got 58 years in law enforcement. I guess you know what probable cause is or a smoking gun. Nobody will look at what I have. That has to be the biggest cover-up in the universe. So that's not, I'm talking about it. I'm not talking about it too much, but I'm still saying what I did. That birth certificate, 150% is a fake document. And I have some great information that a lot of people don't know, connecting that investigation with other corruption and certain people that are still in action, pertains to Russia and the Steele report. I can go on and on. So that's where I'm at now. I retired, still active. I remember NBC interviewed me last year, and they said, is Senator McCain your hero? And I paused, and I said, it took me I gave a 10 year window, because when you're young, a kid, you don't know what the word hero means. I said it took me 77 years to find a hero. And that was 4 months ago, I said to the reporter. I woke up one day, and I told my wife, you know what? I finally found my hero. This is personal. I don't care. Other people can have all the heroes they want. And the reporter said, who is that? And I said, it's Donald Trump. So that's the way I feel. If people don't like it, that's tough. And thanks to you, because, you know, I have a reputation, too. And when you live a life and you get four parking tickets in your life, and you're sitting in a criminal defense table before a judge, a biased judge, over a contempt of court, the same charge, same time as a barking dog. So like we used to say years gone by, the fix was in, period. And they went after me the day before voting started, early voting, and said, this is under Obama, and the judge said that we want him charged on a contempt of court and go to jail for 6 months. And then you put that together with George Soros, the billionaire who gave millions to my opponent. You go back to another law firm that you know, Perkins Coie, that pumped in millions against me. Well, I'll tell you this, Larry, if you don't know it. That's the same law firm that delivered the money to Steele. That's the same law firm which you know very well, and thank you, Larry, for defending me on that, leading that fight to get rid of my pardon. That's the same law firm that went to Hawaii and delivered the birth certificate to the White House. So I can go on and on and on. But you think anybody will listen to me? No. But I'll get that message out about 5 months.
The people that count, Sheriff, listen to you, okay? And a large part of the show, I'm talking about Freedom Watch's leftist media strike force, because the left, this radical left, and it's not even radical anymore, it's all the same thing, has tried to destroy you and my other clients, like Chief Justice Roy Moore, like Laura Loomer, like Dr. Jerome Corsi, like Cliven Bundy, the rest of them. And they leave a lot of ruin behind and a lot of baggage. And this is what we have to fight against. And as far as the birth certificate is concerned, you were absolutely right about the birth certificate. You never said that Obama was born in Kenya or any place else, but just simply that it's fraudulent. And if you didn't even go any further, if you didn't even do a thorough investigation, which you did with your investigator at the cold case posse, Mike Zullo, a very good man and a competent man, the fact is, on that birth certificate, it says African American. They didn't even use that in 1961. When Obama was born. That phrase wasn't invented yet. And it's ironic that my other client, Chief Justice Roy Moore, is the only judge ever to have written an opinion, albeit a dissenting opinion, because his fellow justices on the Alabama Supreme Court had no guts, that requires all candidates to present their original birth certificate to qualify to run for president in Alabama. And that goes whether you're white, black, or anything else. But of course, if you question anything with Obama, like we questioned anybody on the left, you are called a racist. And I've never heard a racist word out of your mouth, whether it's to Latinos or anybody else. But that's what they do. They do it to me. They do it to you. They do it to my clients. And we just are not going to take it anymore. So my hat's off to you. Now, what happened in the Ninth Circuit yesterday is that they were trying to take away your pardon. Well, they didn't succeed at doing that, but you wanted to have even that minor misdemeanor traffic ticket-like conviction vacated, and it should have been vacated. But you drew a judge by the name of Jay Bybee, who is very biased. By the way, he's a rhino Republican appointed by W. Bush. He's the one who gave me so much difficulty trying to defend the Bundys in that case. He's someone who says it's okay to open up mail from a lawyer to a client if the client's in prison. He believes in waterboarding. I'm not sure I disagree with him on that. But, you know, this guy is out of control. And he's the one who wrote the majority opinion. But he did say, and this is important because I have a case for you against the leftist media, Rolling Stone and Huffington Post, that you weren't even really convicted because you were never sentenced. Yet you were branded a convicted felon, and that's what I sued for defamation for in your behalf. And if anybody else defames you in the future, they'll get another lawsuit.
Well, one thing about the birth certificate, I didn't go into the African American, all that.
Hold on, Sheriff. We're going to get into that. I'm going to keep you over, if you can, for another 5 minutes. We'll be right back.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We're back with the verdict section of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. The verdict, pure and simple. And Donald Trump supported this at one time, and he does in his heart today, is that Obama's birth certificate is a complete fraud, like everything else nearly that he did during his administration. So you were about ready to say, Sheriff, that you went to Italy and you got forensic experts. Tell us a little bit about that. We've got about 4 minutes left, and then I'll wrap this up and let people know where they can go if they want to support you in your sheriff's race to become sheriff again of Maricopa County.
First of all, when I opened the investigation, I had a big press conference. I said from the beginning, and I say it now, I could care less where Obama was born. Actually, when I opened this, I said to myself, maybe I will clear the president. All I'm concerned about is a fake government official document. And, you know, I've locked up hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens. many of them in a workplace, having fake government documents, Social Security, driver's license. So that's all I was after. I didn't care about the computer background. We did all that. But when you take someone's birth certificate, we were lucky, and we proved through forensic information in Italy, because nobody else would look into it, that there was 6 or 8 items taken from that document and pasted on the phony document. I mean, I don't know what else you need. That's more than a smoking gun. It's a smoke cannon. I mean, what else do you need to prove a fake document? And that's all I went after, and I go after it to this day. I don't care where he was born. I'm talking.
Yeah, well, see, and that's the fearlessness we need. That's what I was saying before you joined us on this show, Sheriff, is the American people cannot be afraid. You cannot be afraid to be branded a racist. You cannot be afraid to be called the radical right. You can't be afraid to be in public among people that really want to harm you. You have to do what needs to be done. Our founding fathers were not afraid. They risked their lives. They pledged their honor and gave up their sacred fortune, as a matter of fact, to form a new nation. And you are the modern-day equivalent of our founding fathers, because King George III wanted to destroy them, but he didn't succeed by the grace of God. And that's why we must continue to fight on, and that's why I'm very proud of having you as my client. It's why I personally endorse you to become the sheriff again of Maricopa County, a very beautiful place and a nice place in Arizona, and why we need more Sheriff Joe Arpaios. So tell people where they can go to support your campaign to become sheriff again, because we need you in charge out there more than ever.
Well, just go to ARPAIOforSheriff.com and you'll get the message. I have a Facebook, almost 1 million followers, a lot of support out there. Larry, I'm going to tell you, a lot of people still don't know I'm running for sheriff, believe it or not. But I'm in this to win. I'm not taking any prisoners. General MacArthur said, I shall return, and I'm returning. And I'm going to work hard and help Trump, and it's going to be a lot of fun. When he gets reelected and I get reelected, we're going to have a lot of good work to do together, believe me.
And we need you faster than ever, because, as I said, Sheriff, I'm really worried that the Democrats and the left are using this coronavirus to create panic and anarchy, to let them seize control of this country. We need law and order. My brother was a policeman in Philadelphia. I know what it's all about. I was a Justice Department lawyer. I was, in effect, a law enforcement officer. And, we don't get respect these days. And it's something that needs to occur. We can't worry about it, but we've got to do our job. So I want to thank you. And I want people to go to freedomwatchusa.org, join our Justice League, support our leftist media strike force, our judicial selection strike force. We need better judges. Some of the judges that have been appointed, frankly, are not that great. The president was given bad advice on some of these judges, but hopefully he'll get better ones in the future, and I support the president too. So thanks, Sheriff, for everything that you do. And we'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, and we just need to keep fighting peacefully and legally to preserve the vision of our founding fathers, to preserve our freedoms and liberties, and to make sure that we live as one nation under God. Thank you for listening to me. I'll be back next week.